Welcome to the Imbalanced Podcast, a place where we navigate the struggles and perks of single mom life, the ebbs and flows of my work in the beauty industry, quality relationships, working through personal traumas, and finding our higher purpose. Sounds like a lot of struggling? Well, it is. So grab a drink and let's try and balance it together, because who said we have to navigate through this chaos alone? So I want to rewind a little bit, and I want to go back to, how did you start this journey in the movement of science?
The reason I got into this was a few different things that created like a beautiful, perfect storm. My husband is former military, and his back would always hurt. And I just was frustrated the fact that I couldn't help him, and that his chiros couldn't help him, his doctors couldn't help him. And it was just something that he just felt like he kind of just had to live with. And I was working for the military as a fitness specialist or fitness coordinator for a long time. And I was seeing the same patterns over and over again. And I thought, this doesn't make sense. We're not learning how to move our bodies. We're not learning how to take care of our bodies. And when you have a population that is pushing their bodies to the extreme without having the recovery or the sources, tools, anything to fix it, that's a recipe for disaster. Right. So I got fed up with working for the government. And I said, well, let me figure out what I'm going to do with my life. I went to a place for a service.
No names will be dropped.
No names. And this random place was like, oh, become a stretch therapist and we'll pay you. And I'm like, come on. Who's paying people to stretch them? That's ridiculous. Like, right? I'm a personal trainer. I'm like, that's ridiculous.
You're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, right? Like anything else, if you don't know something, it's so easy to roll your eyes and be like, that's ridiculous. Yes. So I went down the rabbit hole of, well, what is stretching? What is this? Why is this a new thing? And when I did that, I came across the Stretch to Win Institute in Arizona. And at that time, website looked janky. Their YouTube looked janky. But they had conversations with professional athletes. They had conversations with Donovan McNabb and Charles Barkley and an Olympic hockey team. I forgot what year. And I was like, and Google. There's the Seahawks. I don't know how I even found this, but the Seahawks were looking for somebody with this particular certification. And I was like, all right, they're legit. So I went out to Arizona and I got the first level of, it was called fascial stretch therapy at that point. And I came home and I did my very first session with my husband, and he was just doing his squats. And as he was doing his squats, he was like, oh my God, like he's going deeper. Then he's bringing his legs in closer and he's going deeper and he's doing full squats, upright position, anatomically correct, right? For the first time since he was like 19. Wow. And that's when my eyes were like, oh, this is something powerful and amazing.
Yeah.
And then I said, wait a minute. Again, I'm old school. I've been in the industry for a little bit. You know what I mean? When I got in, we were like over the head, beaten over the head as personal trainers. If somebody comes to you with pain, you refer out, period. You do not touch anybody that has pain or work with anybody that has pain. Now it's a different talk show, right? Like people are personal trainers and they're just doing it. So I said to my husband, I was like, I think this is a game changer, and I think I can really help people with this tool, but it doesn't change my scope of practice. And we toyed with becoming a physical therapist, chiro, like we were going back and forth. And we decided I'm going to become a massage therapist. Um, so then I became a massage therapist. I did the second level of the training. I continued on. I did the third level of training. And then I've done so many other trainings since, because I realized that I can't do anything with the muscle if I don't work the fascia.
Right.
And you're not going to just get out of pain if we don't do the stretching or the strengthening rather.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm seeing the third piece, which is the emotional stuff, the stress, the somatic movement type stuff. All of those things, those three elements, I think are key to get somebody to really be able to perform well. And I promise you, in a few years, there's probably going to be a fourth thing that I'm like, how did I miss this? Right. But
Right.
that's where I am right now.
Why does it take someone on average 7 times to leave before they can actually leave?
Well, there's a dependency that's built up anytime we're in a relationship with someone. And we also have love in this relationship.
Right.
Usually it starts with this lovely honeymoon phase, and it moves into tension building. And that part could take years in some situations. You could stay in the honeymoon phase for quite a while before it moves into the tension building. And so in that time, we build up dependency, we build up love, we build up trust with this person. We might have children with them. We might even give over some of our financial control or resources to them. And so for a lot of reasons, we have that dependency built. And then in the tension building, it's that time where you feel like you're walking on eggshells and you don't quite know if you're on solid ground. That might be the period that you feel like, okay, I can't do this, or this isn't going to work. But then very quickly it moves back into that honeymoon or that seduction phase. And so I think that human nature doesn't want to believe that someone that we love would really want to hurt us. And we, because we love that person, hope that it will go back to the way it was. And that if we just do all of these things that maybe they're telling us need to change, that things will be okay and we can make it work with them.
Right.
And so I think that part of it is just the human nature that wants things to be okay. And then the more tangible, practical things are that we may, especially right now with the housing crisis the way it is, it's very difficult to just suddenly leave and go find another place to live. There may not be easy access to our documents. We may not have easy access to birth certificates or Social Security cards, or in some cases, the abuser may be in control of the finances. So even if we wanted to leave, we don't have the resources to. Or the abuser may be a really good parent. It may be that we've been shielding our kids from what's going on to the point that we don't want to shake up our children's lives in that way. In some cases, the abuser may be threatening people that we love. They may be threatening our loved ones or even our pets. Many people stay because they're afraid that if they leave, that their dog or cat won't be fed, or maybe there's been a threat against their animal. So there's a lot of reasons why someone might stay, or why it might take some very careful safety planning and time to make that plan of action, to gather the resources, the money, maybe start saving some money. It might take time to gather the birth certificates, the Social Security cards, all of the things that need to be in place in order for someone to successfully set up a life on the other side. And the other really important part is that the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is within the first couple of weeks to couple of months after someone leaves.
Most likely, the abuse can happen through manipulation, through emotional abuse, verbal abuse. And I think that's something for me that I didn't realize was abuse so much, was verbal and emotional. Like I didn't realize how much weight that held, and it's just as detrimental as physical abuse can be.
It's even mixed in with those mixed messages of, I'm the only one who knows this or that, or I I love you, but I love you even though you're this and this.
Right.
And it over time can really undermine our confidence and our self-worth.
Mm-hmm. This line of work and being so young when I started, I didn't treat this like a business. Okay. I was like, let me just try to get as many clients in as possible with like no type of strategy. So I just didn't put much thought into how am I going to get people into the door. It was at the time I was working at a commission-based salon where it was like you sit around and wait for people to walk in. And that was a time when Instagram, like, it was not like popping, but it had recently came out within the past like couple of years. So I remember I did start like my hair page at that time, but at that time, it was kind of hard to like advertise on Instagram. People were just going on there just to post cute pictures. I kind of miss those days, honestly. But I was more so thinking about like how much money I'm going to make this paycheck. Like that's all that mattered, right? And then getting anybody in the door, like doing all types of services, shit that I didn't even want to do, doing shit for cheap because I'm like, oh, some money is better than no money. And, granted, at the beginning of some things, like you may just have to do that, right? I'm not saying it's wrong that I did that, but you don't want to get stuck in that pattern for too long because you're kind of selling yourself out. You don't want to end up staying at a place where people just come to you because you're convenient for them. Convenient as far as prices or just the location or you're available before another person's available, just things like that. It's you can take advantage of that while you're trying to build up, but you want people to want you, right? So this is something that, like, if you're just new to the beauty industry, this is something you may not be able to do something with right now, but having that in the back of your mind, like writing that in your notes where your goals section is, so that a year from now, you do not want to be there still. That's not where you still want to be. On top of that, you want to organize your finances, keeping track of the services that you do, the product sales that you make, and then the product and supply cost. All right. This is very like basic. And this is something you're going to have to do your entire career as an entrepreneur, business owner, whatever. And you want to, subtract the product supply cost from your services to see what your actual profit is. Like, don't even get stuck on the number that you see like coming into your account. That is not your pay. That is like part of it is your business expense. So you more so want to think to yourself like, okay, what type of services can I do with the least amount of like supply or least amount of cost so that your profit is higher, obviously, but also getting yourself used to looking at your profit as that's how much you actually made off of your business. However, this celebration should extend beyond just 1 month and be incorporated into our lives throughout the year. In order to educate our children in Black history, there are various activities that can be done. The National Park Service website offers a wealth of resources, including a day-by-day calendar that highlights influential figures, places, and stories related to Black American heritage. By engaging in these activities, we can normalize the exploration and appreciation of Black history with our children, as we cannot solely rely on the school systems to provide a comprehensive education on this subject. There's always more to learn, especially when it comes to history. So I wanted this to be kind of interactive, something that you can do with your children, focusing on each day of the month. Day 1, you can focus on exploring the beginning of when Black History Month was founded, which this is something I didn't even know doing this research for this. I didn't know who founded Black History Month, unfortunately, and his name was Carter G. Woodson. His historical home is actually one of the national parks in DC. Day 16, Booker T. Washington wanted to improve higher education opportunities for Black people in the South. So he built the Tuskegee Institution, which is now a national historical site. George Washington Carver was also a professor at the Institute, and he wanted to improve the lives of lower income farmers. So he created innovative new farming techniques. These are restaurants. So Shanklin Hall in Adams Morgan, DC, which is, I've also been told it hosts really good events. Land of Kush, they're vegan, and apparently their yams are worth trying.
I'm still in the same space that I was in location-wise for the past 2 years. But I feel like as much as I'm doing a lot of facials, like a lot of skincare stuff still, I started this, not so much new venture, but I'm leaning into more of the self-care aspect. So I've been doing a whole lot more like seminars, workshops, classes. Of course, I'm being picked up for podcast features, panel discussions, things like that. So that's been really fun and exciting.
Yeah, I feel like because I was looking at your story right now, I saw something. It was like join the discussion on February 7th.
That's for Grow Charity. And that is going to be a discussion about self-love and self-intimacy, something that I feel like a lot of people kind of miss the mark on. I'm all about self-care. So self-love and self-care go hand in hand. But intimacy is something that we don't really talk about when it comes to solo, right? Like it's always involving someone else. So we wanted to just lead the discussion about being more intimate with yourself and how to actually care for yourself in that manner without the necessity of someone else. But this particular workshop was going to be specifically for those that are working in the capacity of emotional labor. So people like myself, where I'm constantly hearing other people's trauma, hairstylists, nail techs, skincare, we're low-key therapists. So we take on other people's, emotional baggage sometimes, and we have to learn how to care for ourselves and separate ourselves from that.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's very on trend with you and just your personality in general. So I'm glad that you've been able to kind of, go into that space because, again, to your point about self-care, I feel like people are very quick to be like, oh, self-care, get your nails done, get your hair done, get your whatever done. And I'm like, you can come get your hair done and look bomb all day long, but you're still carrying that weight around, or you're still feeling like shit, or whatever the case may be. If you still don't have that true self-love, and that is simply just being okay with who you are and accepting who you are, and like you said, not needing another person to validate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I love that you're doing that. I want to talk about all of it, the aesthetics part, and how did you being in the aesthetics field lead you into this more self-care practice?
Actually, I think it was kind of the other way around. I feel like my self-care journey led me into the skincare realm. So, I went to school specifically to focus on makeup, and I wanted to get my license. That way I could practice here in Texas and do makeup. But I fell in love with the idea of skincare and seeing how these experiences of laying on the table and allowing someone into your bubble, into your private space, touches is really, it is intimate. It's one of those things that's really special if you allow someone to touch you in that manner. So being able to do that and seeing the transformations that came from that, made me want to do more. But it was my self-care journey in itself that wanted me to do more for other people, because I saw that I needed that kind of care and attention and love. And, I needed touch. I needed someone to listen to me. I needed to be the one on the table. So seeing how I needed that, I wanted to do that for other people.
We are going to, like I said, unpack some parenting styles, focus on gentle parents and what gentle parenting emphasizes, but also what it may neglect. Does it really benefit us and our children the way advocates present it to? And if gentle parenting feels impossible to you, what are some steps you can take moving forward to better yourself and your parenting skills? I also realized what wounds I had in my own childhood and how that was affecting me being the best parent that I could be to my children. There's nothing wrong with this idea, because I think that is what children need. They need affirmation for their emotions and what they're feeling. And that a lot of the times is what we did not get when we were children. We were not allowed to be sad. We were not allowed to be mad, anything of that nature. And if we were, it means that we were being disrespectful. And that is what a lot of our parents, unfortunately, believed. So this is not to say that there's anything wrong with gentle parenting if that is the approach that you choose, but we have to always still make sure that our children understand, that you can express your emotions, that you can be upset, you can be sad about whatever it is, but we also still have to carry on responsibility of, going to school, going to work, doing our chores, being nice to our peers, being nice to our brothers and our sisters. And it's like, we can't, and as busy parents as well, especially if you are a single parent, it's like you can't always tend to their emotions when you have your own emotions to tend to as well. So, it's just to say that none of us are going to be perfect, but also to give you a little bit of grace if you are a person who's like me, who I learn about a concept and then I'm like, oh my God, I want to pursue this concept. I want this to be like my lifestyle. And then I feel like I ultimately fail at it because I mess up. And then I'm like, I can't do it. And I get discouraged. But again, these are just parenting styles and you can adapt certain things from each.
I think during that time, I've become very involved in politics, particularly around 2014 when Ferguson popped off. It happened 15 minutes away from where I attended school. So it was a very radicalizing time for me, I'd say. I showed up to a protest. It was around the time that I was still very much like, I would say, a Democrat in those moments. And I thought I was exercising my constitutionally given right to go protest. And then they started shooting tear gas canisters at people that were not doing anything. And at least for me, I started running. I didn't know what to do in that moment. But I do remember going home and sort of watching the news and seeing how that protest was very much demonized on mass media. So I think that kind of propelled me into wanting to learn more about politics. I was part of the debate team at the time, which demanded that I do a lot of research, particularly so that we can write cases that would help us argue better, make arguments. But this research took me into like a really deep dive of knowledge that's not, I would say, given on mainstream media. But I quickly realized that these skills that I was picking up were not very common in my communities. But I also found value in it. I found value in it because I I knew what I had to say whenever I was getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And it helped me sort of express myself in a way that made it more understandable for people. And I think sometimes, from the communities that I come from, we might not have the vocabulary to really express what we're feeling or air out our grievances. And people will sometimes just dismiss us because we can't properly communicate with each other. So then it led me onto this path of organizing, of using these skills that I was picking up and using this knowledge and sharing it with my community, so that they could also have these skills and this knowledge, and to take it forward, and to really just help the community come together and rise up for their needs, for their desires. And next thing I know, I'm in Washington, D.C., years later, and I'm organizing, and I become a candidate for the PSL. The PSL, they're called the Party for Socialism and Liberation. So I started doing my own research into it, and I realized quickly that a lot of my thoughts around liberation were very much running parallel to socialism and communism. Um, I feel like since then, my passion and my love for community have sort of morphed into a political organizer role, where I now use that passion to go to protests, to go serve the people.
Going through mother-daughter trauma, but then also having children. How do you feel like that may have changed things, maybe opened new doors as far as emotions, or maybe it closed some things? Like, how did that change you?
Yeah, so it's funny you asked that question, because I think that, so while I do have kind of the world watching, I guess you could say, I also am very serious about making sure I honor myself first. So when I got pregnant, everyone was like, are you going to tell your mom? Like, what's going to happen? Like, that was the hot topic question. And for me, it was like, well, I don't know. I'm not going to tell you no, because that almost feels like I'm trying to predict the future, and I'm saying, like, even if I want to, I won't. And that's not true. It's just, it depends on the circumstances, because who's to say she won't find out that I'm pregnant, and then the natural maternal instincts kick in that I never saw her have, but maybe they will kick in, and who knows what'll happen. So I was always like, well, we'll see what happens, but if things stay the way that they are, then no. And I think I was waiting for a time where I would feel like, you need to contact her. But also in my mind, there was like, well, if you contact her, what will she do? I think that, I knew like what I saw on TV or what we see on Instagram. Like, there's a super popular reel that went around recently where a lady, her mom and her grandmother came to take care of her after she had a baby. I don't know if you saw it, but it was so beautiful. And I'm like, well, my mom wouldn't do that. So like, me calling her is really not going to help me much.
Right.
So I saw that to say that I really did wait, and it never came up. I will say, after I got pregnant though, I had no idea that you like have to recover from pregnancy. I know that sounds so stupid, but nobody ever told me. My girls were in the NICU too, so that brought on so many emotions. Like, I just had babies, now they're taken away from me. I'm feeling like they're in the custody of somebody, and I'm having to beg to see them, because that's really how it is when your kids are in the NICU. And then on top of that, all these foreign substances are coming out of my body. Like, what is going on? I can barely walk. There's just so many things happening. And I realized in that moment, that's really how I felt about mothers and daughters. Like, I didn't know how that worked. So I just really didn't know what a mom could do. In that moment, though, I was really able to differentiate that, like, you don't want your mom because she wouldn't do this.
Yeah.
You just want a mom. I just wish I had a guide, and I don't. So I think it opened that up, but that really didn't connect to my mom, because I know that she's incapable of offering me the things that I was wanting, but I still had a longing for someone to do that. And it's nobody there. So You know, it's just me.
That happened because you were one of the first people that I knew to publicly talk about the specific subject of mother-daughter trauma. And now there are a lot more people who speak about family trauma or generational trauma. But how does it feel to have been one of the first people to kind of highlight that subject?
So I think it just feels very humbling. It also feels, you know, similar to what you said earlier, which was that my whole life has been a testament. And I'm a big, like, let's turn these lemons into lemonade person. So if something happens to me, like, you best believe I'm looking for a way to make it work out in my favor. It is true that all things really do work together for our good. But of course, we have to work them too. You can't just sit around and, oh, woe is me, this happened. You really do have to get in there and figure out like strategies and what can I do. For me, there was no one to look to. Like I would even go to therapy and I would try to talk about my mom rather, and people would be like, well, that's your mom. You know, I was even hearing this in a therapy session. Yeah. And I would leave and just feel like, dang, so did I really get helped, or like, was I just judged, or like, what am I supposed to do with this? Because that I don't feel how I think I'm supposed to feel after therapy. And you know, therapy, sometimes you feel crazy after. Right. But it wasn't like a good challenge. I felt like shamed, you know, like, dang, well, maybe I should go talk to her and let her talk any kind of way to me and abuse me. Yeah. But I realized in the midst of that, they're like, dang, nobody knows how to handle this. And Dalicia, you have to become the person who knows how to.
My family and like our home is in the West Bank. So in order to get to the West Bank, there are still checkpoints that you have to go through, right? And honestly, I just kind of want to put this out there too. When you're traveling throughout any of the major cities in Palestine, you're going to have to go through a checkpoint. It's not like getting from like Virginia to DC and then Maryland and you're just traveling one straight shot.
Freely, yeah.
You're going to get stopped multiple times in multiple cities for multiple reasons, okay? And so when they stop you, they'll ask for your identification. They'll ask for the reason for your trip. Again, they'll sometimes they'll push you off to the side in the car. They'll tell you to wait, and they'll take your passport and all your stuff, and they'll search, and then they'll come back and they'll search your car. Like what they're looking for, I don't know. I have no clue. But it's like, I just got off for example, again, back to the airport thing. I just got off a 24-hour day of traveling. I'm trying to get home.
Right.
I already went through the airport. I already went through security multiple times in multiple countries during all my layovers. What do you think that I have with me? What do you think that you're accomplishing by stopping me 1,000 times? And most people, you know, when they're traveling between these different cities, they're going to work, they're going to see family, you know, they got things to do. Nobody's smuggling anything. Nobody's on some bullshit the way that they think we are.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just, it's totally unnecessary. And then there's, you know, the cameras and the drones that they have everywhere. All the streets covered in cameras, okay? These cameras have facial recognition on them. They pick up who you are. They know who you are. With that, they'll find your social media. Through that, they'll figure out, oh, what are they saying about Israel? What are they saying? How pro-Palestine are they? Are they part of a terrorist group? What are they here to do? You know, like all of these things that play into each other. The other point to bring up is what's been happening in Palestine since 1948 even. It's never been about religion. It's never been about religion. So the fact that the media takes Judaism and Islam and skews it and turns this into a conversation about the two religions being in conflict with each other, that's not the case. Jewish people, Muslim people, and Christians, which, yes, there are Palestinian Christians, okay? They all coexisted for a very long time. The problem was white supremacy.
Yes.
White European people who came into the country wanted their own land, wanted to take over, thought they were better than everybody else. And that's where everything went downhill. But again, the media is skewing it and turning it into the Muslims hate the Jews. The Muslims, you know, are trying to get the Jews out of Palestine. That's not what's happening. It's not what's happening. And it's harmful because I'm sure a lot of people have seen what has happened since October 7th here in the United States. A 6-year-old boy was stabbed 20-something times. Three guys in Vermont were shot because they were wearing a kufiya. And like, for what? For what? There was what's it called? An imam outside of a mosque not too long ago. He was shot and killed. He wasn't even Palestinian. He was not even Palestinian.
And we talk about like social constructs and like what the society has created for it to be like the normal standard. And we just realize around the world, these colonizers have made it to where it's like the whiter you are, that's more standard.
Right.
So that is so dangerous because that is why, like you said, this is happening. It's not necessarily because of religion. They're weaponizing religion. They're weaponizing their trauma and their pain that the Jewish people went through, and turning it around. And
another point that I like to touch on is we're not anti-Semites. You know what I mean? Like, we're not anti-Jewish people. It's anti-Zionism. We're anti-Zionist because Zionists are the ones who are upholding this apartheid Israeli regime. There are countless Jewish people that I know and I have seen come out to these protests with us, post on social media in support of Palestine because their religion doesn't teach them to commit a genocide against people. Their religion doesn't encourage that. It's this political agenda, especially after the current war on Gaza and the genocide that they've been committing over there. Palestinians lost their homes. They lost their family members. They lost their friends. They lost their identity. The only thing they deserve is reparations. And the only way they can get reparations is to have a free Palestinian country under a solely Palestinian rule. Period.
So why 5 months?
5 months is what I found was like a sweet spot to be able to get people a full transformation. And I think it allows us to do enough like life together. So if we only work together for a month, like we get some pretty good life. But when we're working together for 5 months, we get to literally do life together. I've had clients where, you know, they've gotten engaged and also gotten pregnant. And so we like get to talk about like what's going to happen with your numbers after these two life events happen. I want you to know that like you're asking questions because they can inform you to make your best next decision. If you're talking to your girlfriend about how she bought her house, you're going to learn something about how you can buy a house or things that she learned.
Do you have any tips for people trying to buy homes right now and like maybe certain things to do with your money or certain habits that you can maybe start doing if you are wanting to buy a home?
Yeah. So when I wanted to buy a house, I felt like houses were too expensive for me at the time. And so I just want to first start by saying, like, if you're in that space where you're like, I'm never going to be able to afford a home because it's so expensive, like, don't lose sight of your goal, right?
This question for me.
Yes. I just recorded a podcast episode on this. I think it came out last week. And it was like, because I think you could apply it to any goal that you have, whether it's making more money in your business, making more money in your 9 to 5, whatever it is. It's like, if you don't have a goal and something that you're working towards, you're going to become stagnant. But like, I moved to DC in 2009 and I didn't put a contract on a house until 2013. Like, it took me 4 years, you know? Yeah. But if I hadn't have had a goal of buying a home, I wouldn't have gone house shopping for multiple years and like been able to identify where I wanted to live or like got to know the market a little bit more. And so I just would offer that to people because it's going to help you shape how you want your finances to look when you are able to buy a home. But when I was searching from like one lender to the next, different lenders will give you different rates. But there's a paper that a lender will give you without like having to pull your credit. And they'll tell you like, okay, you would typically qualify for $400,000 and we would offer you that at the rate of 6.25%. Well, if you have another bank that has given you a similar letter, but they're offering you that same amount of money for 6.5%, then you can say, hey, Bank A actually wants to give me this for 6.25%. Can you match that rate? So just knowing that that's even an option, you want to have a why, right? Like, and you have to keep coming back to the why. And I always also tell people, like, the process doesn't need to be linear. It very seldomly is, but it's being able to identify, like, what does consistency look like for you? And I've been really into habits in the last like year or so. And like, I've been asking myself specifically around nutrition and working out, it's like, okay, well, what are the habits that I want to be able to build? Because for me, that creates sustainability.
Right.
And so I think anything that you're pursuing in your life, any goal, it's like being able to kind of think about, like, well, at the end of the day, what are like some of the smallest habits that I can have? And like last year I started going to the gym at 5 a.m, and it was like, that was just something that became non-negotiable. And now it's just what I do. And like one of my other habits this year is like, I'm going to go on a walk, like after I eat, or like at some point during the day, or after I finish working. And so it's connected to fitness, but it's not like, it's also not punitive. It makes me feel really good. Like just being able to find those habits that, you can incorporate into your life.
Yeah. No, I agree. There is something I read where it was like one thing you can do every day. It can be literally something simple, reading like a verse, going on a walk, something really simple. Then you like build up that it's like an exercise to trust yourself that you can mark that off your list. So
if you are someone who's money curious and you're like something that you want to do, and we were just talking about like habits, like just starting by putting like 10 minutes on your calendar and give yourself a financial task during that time. Just like the 10 minutes could be putting a bill on autopay that you told yourself you're going to put on autopay, or canceling a subscription you told yourself you were going to cancel. I feel like getting started is the hardest part. If you can commit to 10 minutes a week, I think you would be astounded at like what you could create in the next 4 weeks, in the next 16 weeks, because you took the time to just commit to that 10 minutes every single week.
It's STXBP1. And basically what it is every single person is born with 2 STXBP1 genes, and they should duplicate and be identical. And in Jameson's case, one of his genes was not formed properly. And so that created a neurological disorder. And this neurological disorder is so incredibly brand new. It's only been around since 2008 is when it was discovered. Prior to that, a lot of the people who have it were told cerebral palsy, autism. They kind of just put people with this gene mutation in those 2 categories. And so that's how people would get labeled essentially before they actually found the genetic testing and they were able to put them in the right place, I guess, and treat them as an individual with a specific condition instead of, here, we're just going to put you over in this because this is what it looks like.
But how did you and your husband like work together in this? Or even if you guys bumped heads, how did you guys navigate all of this together?
We just had to lean on each other through everything. I think that he probably leaned on me pretty heavy when it came to figuring all of this out, just having known that I have a sibling with special needs. And so I don't want to say it came easier for me, because it was definitely not easy by any means. But we had to talk all the time. We communicated our hopes, our worst nightmares, and we were just there the entire time. And I think the hardest part too early on was when for that first hospitalization, he was there with me. But then after that, we still did need to divide and conquer. We still needed to parent our other 3 children. He still has a full-time job. And trying to navigate that, it was definitely challenging. And he's a part of the military. Like if the phone rings, he's got to go. He still does travel frequently with work, which is a lot, with 4 kids to begin with, to be at home by yourself. But add a child with special needs who has daily appointments and therapies and different medications that have to be administered at different times. I mean, those things are definitely challenging.
I really learned a lot about, kids, and adults in that environment by when I would get a child, especially if they're having a hard time, I would welcome them like, yo, welcome to Earth, welcome to being here. And so, it's frustrating. You try to use your words, you can't use your words, you don't know what's going on. So that's how I approach them. So they taught me a lot about adults, because a lot of times when an adult can't express how they feel, they're throwing a fit too, so it made me become more patient. So the birth of doing a gifted event came out of, the fact that I wanted to reconcile having enough time, whatever, without alienating and not cutting their hair anymore. I just come on my day off, give each kid 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was that. And so, but yeah, and it just, flowed from there.
So when I seen your video, I was just like, wow, like I just really felt it, how kids just need that attention and patience, even if they don't have any special needs or disability.
That's why I started sharing the content, because I'm like, it was happening too many times of parents saying like, yo, I don't know who you are or what you do, but the way he's acting with you right now, he's never done that.
Yeah.
He's never sat still. He has never sat through a haircut or whatever. And so, so then like the transformations that were happening too, and seeing parents, pretty much go into tears, like when I tell them that the haircut was free and that it's been sponsored by people.
I feel like I still harbor some things. So how do you get past that? Like, because for me, I'm just like, okay, like I've worked on some things with myself, like I understand things, but what if you still have like a feeling about it? Like, how do you get past it? Like, what do you do for yourself? What do you say to yourself to move forward?
I don't put myself in position to have to receive anything that's going to lead to disappointment that I could control. And so when it comes to like where, say, past experiences where like that were a trauma bond to or heartbreak, right? I go, in my book, I talk about like having, like knowing your heart story. I went through all those, the parts, all those experiences that made up the heart that I carry in the present by becoming present with my past, and looking back, okay, when this happened, and which always most of the time came back down to, it was my fault. And so, but to me, I'm not carrying anything that is not mine to carry.
They know that's my boundary. They keep going over the boundary. They don't respect me. So if I stay with them, they're going to continue to disrespect me.
And then you are now complicit in it because you're there, because you know what's up.
Yeah.
You can't be surprised. You can't be surprised. Loving is a choice. And so in being with someone is a choice. I need people to be intentional about how you choose to love.
And I think even in adulthood, we have created like this divide between women and men. But I think conversations like this are what's gonna, like, in the discourse is what's gonna kind of like bring us together, because I think I love the outlook that you have. Like, we're all human first.
I try to utilize it in a more like simple, applicable way, as opposed to this just kind of like woo magical thing, which I mean, I kind of do in like my own personal practice. But as far as like offering information outside, I try to like simplify it and be like, all right, this is what's happening. This is going to provide a bit more grace and flow. Take it if you will. If you don't, well, do your thing too. Like getting to know like who I am at my core, how I operate, how I process things, like what it is that makes like my mental health like better. And astrology really illuminated like, oh, like this is how I flow. This is how I process. No wonder I don't fit in here, because that's not my box to like be in. And so in learning astrology, I, learn myself, and then as I kind of grew more proficient in the language, because it really is like a whole language in it of itself, I used it for my own self-discovery. I then, learned more and was able to apply it to like help other people understand themselves, their process, and like how to flow again with the energy. So it was just yeah.
And so the people that come
Thank you.
to see you for services, what encourages someone to seek an astrologer?
They have a question, and then I'm able to provide some sort of clarity to an answer, and that's really it. So I would say like it's really a great tool for sourcing like answers, and what I like to call it is cosmic clarity. Like astrology provides a sense of cosmic clarity, and you know, again, it really is like a different language that I have learned to read and I guess speak. So, yeah, but a lot of things, so you can learn a lot of different things with astrology, because when you look at what's called the birth chart, kind of, so astrology, the birth chart, it looks like a pie. So each piece of the pie symbolizes a different area of life. Most people are concerned with love and money. Those are like the two biggest things.
You know, we're put on this earth for a reason, and we have to make the best out of it. And who wants to be here every day, you know, sad and depressed about the things that have happened to us in our past, if we still have the opportunity and the blessing to still be here on earth? Again, we can't live a life of perfection, and we can't completely take away things that make us uncomfortable, but we can sure as hell create tools to help us when we need to navigate through those feelings. Let's stay connected. You can find me on Instagram at imbalancedwithcat or on my website, imbalancedpod.com. Give me a follow or a podcast review, and I'd love to share it on air. Thanks again for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show.